My parents posted my dead name online, told everyone my grandma had kidnapped me, and said I was being groomed into a lifestyle. When I tried to stand up for myself, my mom just said, "You're mentally unstable." Turns out, she was the unstable one. My parents said I was possessed the night I told them I wasn't their son anymore. The first time I wore a sundress, my mom found it and called me a disgrace. I was 8. It was yellow, with little blue flowers stitched around the hem, and it made me feel like I could breathe. Like someone named Mark didn't exist for a few blissful hours. My friend Sarah had given it to me in secret. Her mom didn't know. My mom did. She found the dress stuffed behind my school books, and everything changed. From that point on, I was kept out of sight. My parents banned me from family gatherings, said I made people uncomfortable. I wasn't allowed to sleep over at friends' houses or even go to birthday parties. If I made a new friend, they'd track down their parents and make sure they knew I was troubled. One night, my dad ripped my favorite book in half because it had a girl on the cover. My mom told me I could earn her love back by acting normal for just one day. The only person who ever fought for me was Grandma. She'd call every Sunday and say, "Put my girl on the phone." Even when my mom snapped, "He's not a girl," Grandma never budged. She'd knit me scarves in bright pastels that felt like silk against my skin, slipped me notes that said, "You deserve joy," in her elegant cursive handwriting. When I wasn't allowed to come to Thanksgiving, she told them, "Then none of you get to come either," her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. High school was where I started reclaiming myself. I'd leave home in the clothes they approved, loose jeans, baggy shirts that hung from my shoulders like prison uniforms. Then in the school bathroom, I'd transform, a floral blouse with swipe of lip gloss. My friends helped hide the outfits in their lockers. We created our own little sanctuary, a rebellion in fabric and color. But there was one teacher, Mrs. Ellsworth. She never said my name without sneering, her lips curling like she'd tasted something bitter. She told me once that confusion like yours would only lead to substances, delinquency, or worse. I ignored her, until the day she called my parents about one of my outfits. That night was the worst one yet. My parents screamed until their throats went raw, voices echoing off the walls of our pristine suburban home, said I was possessed, a disgrace, that they'd rather have no child than a mockery of one. They pulled me out of school and enrolled me in an online program, said I didn't deserve the freedom to embarrass them publicly. I was trapped. They watched everything, my messages, my screen time, my closet. The only sliver of light came from Grandma's letters, slid under the door by our old mailman, Mr. Reeves, who Grandma must have paid off. One day, her note read, "There's always a room for you here," and I took it. I packed a backpack, stole my dad's emergency cash stash hidden behind the water heater, and walked for 3 hours until I reached her house. My legs ached and blisters formed on my heels, but each step felt like moving toward oxygen. I knocked, terrified she'd scold me for running away. Instead, she opened the door, hugged me tight, and said, "My sweet girl, you're home." She didn't ask questions. She made chamomile tea that tasted like comfort, and heated up her homemade chicken pot pie, steam rising with the scent of rosemary and thyme. She let me cry without rushing me, her weathered hand rubbing circles on my back. But that night, I spiraled. I spent my second night at Grandma's curled up in the bathtub, shaking, the cold porcelain against my skin. "What if they're right?" I whispered, voice bouncing off the tile walls. "What if I'm just wrong?" Grandma didn't try to fix it. She just held me, her cardigan smelling of lavender and Earl Grey. "You're not wrong," she said. "You're rare. That's what scares them." The next morning, my parents called. I heard her voice, calm but fierce as a lioness. "You don't get to abandon a child, then complain when someone else picks her up." They told her to send me back. She told them to go to hell, the words shocking from her usually proper mouth. Later that day, she told me a story I'd never heard, about her own sister, about how their parents disowned her for loving another woman, how Grandma never forgave them for it. "This family's history is full of silence and shame," she said, her eyes reflecting decades-old pain. "I refuse to let that poison touch you." That night, I sat with her on the porch swing. I wore one of her old sun hats and a soft pink cardigan that smelled of cedar and thyme. She painted my nails, steady and gentle, the pale pink polish glistening in the porch light. "You get to define who you are," she whispered, "not them." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. I started using the name Lila. It felt right, whole, like slipping into a skin that had been waiting for me all along. My friends found me online and I updated everything. Instagram, email, even my Spotify bio. My dead name disappeared like morning mist. Lila was here. I hesitated before hitting post. I knew it'd burn every bridge left. I knew people at church would whisper behind cupped hands. I knew the teacher who called my parents would see. I posted it anyway. When I posted my first photo in a flowy blue sundress that caught the light like water, I captioned it, "They tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed." The backlash from my parents was instant. My mom messaged me, "You're disgusting. You'll regret this." I didn't reply, though my finger hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Torres, helped us file for emancipation. He had kind eyes and a voice that never wavered when he called me Lila. She had receipts, text messages, emails, medical records showing the anxiety medication I'd been prescribed after my parents' interventions. We prepared for court, but my parents never showed. Cowards in the end. Grandma enrolled me in a new school, where I started fresh. I joined the LQB Plus Club, where kids like me existed in the open, laughing and planning events without looking over their shoulders. She helped me decorate my room in lavender and gold, colors that felt like dawn after endless night. Bought me a dress for spring formal that made me gasp when I saw it. The dress hung on my closet door, catching the morning light. Lavender chiffon with a silver belt. I touched it every morning when I woke up, just to make sure it was real. The emancipation papers came through on a Tuesday. Grandma and I were eating breakfast when Mr. Torres called with the news. His voice buzzed through the speaker as Grandma held the phone between us. "It's official, Lila. You're legally emancipated. Your parents have no legal authority over you anymore." My hand froze, fork halfway to my mouth. The scrambled egg suddenly looked blurry through my tears. Grandma squeezed my shoulder, her touch anchoring me to the moment. "Thank you," I whispered, not sure if he could even hear me. After the call, Grandma and I just sat there. The kitchen clock ticked. The neighbor's dog barked. Normal sounds on the most abnormal day of my life. I'm free, I said, testing the words on my tongue like a new language. Grandma nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You always were, sweetheart. Now the law recognizes it too. We celebrated with ice cream for breakfast, chocolate chip cookie dough, eaten straight from the carton, cold and sweet and forbidden. I posted a photo of the empty container with the caption, "Emancipation tastes like freedom," and cookie dough. My friends from my old school flooded the comments with heart emojis and congratulations, but by afternoon, the first signs of trouble appeared. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. I opened it and my stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. My mom had created a public post about me, about how I was mentally unstable and manipulated by liberal influences, how I'd been stolen from them by my enabler grandmother. She'd used my dead name, posted baby pictures of me, told everyone I was confused, troubled, possibly on substances. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack that sounded like bones breaking. "Lila?" Grandma called from downstairs, her voice tinged with concern. "Everything okay?" I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it was closing up, air refusing to move in or out. She found me curled up on my bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiny glow-in-the-dark stars we'd stuck there. Without a word, she sat beside me, picked up my cracked phone, and read the post. "Well," she finally said, her voice steady but tight as a violin string, "I suppose we should have expected this. They're lying," I whispered, the words barely audible. "Of course they are." She stroked my hair, her fingers gentle against my scalp. "And anyone who matters will know that." But the damage spread like wildfire. My parents contacted everyone, their church, old family friends, even the court. They claimed Grandma had kidnapped me, that I was being groomed into a lifestyle. They posted screenshots of my social media, calling me confused and sick. People I'd known my whole life started messaging me. Some were concerned, others were cruel. Mrs. Ellsworth, my old teacher, commented that she'd always known something was wrong with that boy, her words like acid on my screen. That night, I deleted all my social media apps. I couldn't bear to see more. "They're trying to erase me," I told Grandma as we sat on the porch swing. The evening air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of her roses. "They can't erase what's real," she said firmly, the swing creaking beneath us. "You're real, Lila." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of shattering glass, like a gunshot through the quiet house. I ran downstairs in my pajamas to find Grandma standing in the living room, surrounded by glittering shards that caught the morning light like diamonds. A rock the size of a fist lay on the carpet, wrapped in paper secured with a rubber band. "Don't come closer, honey," Grandma warned, her voice shaking slightly. "There's glass everywhere." I froze on the stairs, watching as she carefully picked up the rock and unwrapped the paper. Her face hardened as she read it, lines deepening around her mouth. "What does it say?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. She hesitated, then read aloud, "Abominations will burn." My knees went weak. I sank down onto the stairs, wood cool against my legs. I showed Grandma, who immediately called the police. They came, took photos, wrote a report. Asked if we had security cameras. We didn't. Asked if we had enemies. We did. They said they'd increase patrols in the area but didn't seem hopeful about finding who did it. "Do you think it was them?" I asked Grandma after the police left. She was sweeping up the last of the glass, the broom making soft scratching sounds against the hardwood. "I don't know, honey, but it doesn't matter who threw it. What matters is that we're not going to let it scare us." But I was scared. I kept seeing that rock flying through the window, kept imagining what might have happened if it had hit Grandma instead of the glass. That afternoon, Grandma installed security cameras. "Been meaning to do this anyway," she said casually, as if it wasn't because someone had threatened us. I stayed home from school the next day. Couldn't face the thought of leaving Grandma alone. What if they came back? "You can't hide forever," she told me gently over lunch, the sunlight making her silver hair glow. "That's what they want." I knew she was right, but it took 3 days before I could make myself go back to school. When I did, I found that news had spread there too. Some kids stared, others whispered behind their hands, but my new friends from the LQB+ club formed a protective circle around me. "We've got your back," said Javier, the club president, his rainbow pin catching the fluorescent lights. My parents tried the same garbage when I came out. After school, I found a note taped to my locker. My stomach clenched as I unfolded it, bracing for more threats. Instead, in careful handwriting, it read, "Your speech saved my life. Thank you. A friend." No name, no way to know who left it. But somehow, that anonymous note meant more than all the viral comments combined. I was still thinking about it when I got home and found Grandma in the kitchen with Mr. Torres. Their serious expressions made me freeze in the doorway, backpack still slung over one shoulder. "What's wrong?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Mr. Torres gestured to the chair across from him. "Your parents have filed a motion to overturn your emancipation." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, the world suddenly off axis. "They can't do that. It's done. You said it was official." "It is," he assured me, his tie loosened at the neck. "But they're claiming new evidence. They're saying your grandmother is mentally unfit to house you, that she's encouraging delusions that put you in danger." I looked at Grandma, whose face had gone pale but determined, like a soldier preparing for battle. "That's ridiculous." "Of course it is," Mr. Torres agreed, shuffling papers before him. "But they've gotten statements from members of their church, from your former teacher, Mrs. Ellsworth, even from a psychologist who's never met either of you." "A psychologist?" Grandma's voice was sharp as a blade. "Dr. Wesley Vaughn. He specializes in gender confusion therapy. He submitted an affidavit stating that based on your social media posts, Lila is showing signs of social contagion and needs intervention." My hands curled into fists, nails biting into palms. "He's never even met me." Exactly why his statement won't hold up in court, Mr. Torres said, his confidence steadying me slightly. But it's enough to get a hearing scheduled. A hearing, back in court, facing my parents again. When? I managed to ask, mouth dry as sand. 3 weeks from Thursday. The same day as spring formal, of course. After Mr. Torres left, Grandma and I sat in silence. The security cameras she'd installed after the rock incident blinked their red lights, a constant reminder that we weren't safe. I'm sorry, I finally said, voice small in the quiet kitchen. This is all because of my post. Grandma's head snapped up. Don't you dare apologize for being yourself. This is on them, not you. But if I hadn't gone viral, they would have found another excuse, she said firmly, hands flat on the table. People like your parents always do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the security camera feed on my phone, jumping at every shadow that moved across the lawn. Around 2 a.m., I heard Grandma's bedroom door open and went downstairs to find her in the kitchen, making tea, the kettle's whistle breaking the night's silence. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, pulling out a second mug from the cabinet. I shook my head, hair falling into my eyes. What if they win? She poured hot water over the tea bags, steam rising between us. They won't. But what if they do? What if they make me go back? She set the mug in front of me, her eyes fierce in her gentle face. Then we'll run. Canada, Mexico, wherever we need to. I'm not letting them take you. The absolute certainty in her voice steadied me. We sipped our tea in silence, the kitchen clock ticking away the hours until dawn. The next day at school, I told my friends from the LQBT+ club about the court hearing. Javier immediately organized what he called Operation Testimony, gathering statements from teachers, counselors, and students who could vouch for how well I was doing. We'll flood the court with evidence, he declared, eyes bright with purpose. They won't stand a chance. His confidence helped, but the knot in my stomach remained, especially when, after school, I found another note on my locker. This one wasn't friendly. Freak. Go home. I crumpled it up, looking around the empty hallway. Someone was watching me. I could feel it, like eyes boring into my back. That feeling followed me home, intensified when I checked my email to find a message from an anonymous account. The subject line, "We know where you live." The body contained just our address and a Bible verse about abominations. I showed Grandma, who immediately called the police. The same officers came, took another report, said the same things about increasing patrols. One of them, Officer Ramirez, seemed genuinely concerned, her dark eyes softening when she looked at me. Have you considered a restraining order? She asked. Against who? I asked bitterly, gesturing at my laptop. Anonymous emails? Random notes? Against your parents, she clarified. Given the timing of these threats and their court filing, I looked at Grandma, who nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her face. It might help our case, she said. The next day, we were back in Mr. Torres's office, filing for a temporary restraining order. He took photos of the email, the note, the police reports about the rock. The judge might not grant it without direct evidence linking your parents to these incidents, he warned, glasses sliding down his nose. But it establishes a pattern of harassment coinciding with their legal actions. As we were leaving his office, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. Hello? Is this Lila? A woman's voice, hesitant, unfamiliar. Yes, who's this? My name is Nancy. I was a member of your parents' church. Until recently. I gripped the phone tighter, knuckles white. Okay, I need to tell you something about what they're doing. Can we meet? I looked at Grandma, who had stopped to listen, her eyebrows raised in question. She raised an eyebrow. I don't know, I said carefully. How do I know this isn't a trap? It's not, I swear. I have a transgender son. He's in college now, but I know what your parents are doing. I've seen it from the inside. I covered the phone. She says she has a trans son, that she knows what my parents are planning. Grandma thought for a moment, eyes narrowed in consideration. Tell her we'll meet her somewhere public, the coffee shop downtown. We arranged to meet Nancy that afternoon. I was a bundle of nerves as we waited, jumping every time the door opened, the bell jingling. When a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and kind eyes approached our table, I knew immediately it was her. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from us. I wasn't sure you would. What do you know about my parents? I asked, too anxious for small talk. Nancy glanced around, then lowered her voice. They've organized a campaign against you. They're calling it Saving Mark. They've got the church raising money for legal fees, for therapy when they get you back. They're coaching people on what to say to the court. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed acid. What kind of things? That your grandmother is mentally unstable, that she's forcing you to dress like a girl, that you were a normal, happy boy until you went to live with her. Grandma's hand found mine under the table, warm and steady. Do you have proof of any of this? Nancy nodded, pulling a strand of hair behind her ear. I recorded their planning meeting last Sunday. I couldn't just sit there and listen to them plot against a child, not after what my own son went through. She pulled out her phone and played an audio file. My father's voice filled our corner of the cafe, talking about deprogramming and spiritual warfare. My mother chiming in about saving our son from this perversion. Then another voice, one I recognized as Pastor Reynolds, suggesting they document any unusual behavior from the grandmother and emphasize her age and potential cognitive decline. I felt sick, bile rising in my throat. Grandma's face had gone stone cold. They're targeting me to get to you, she said quietly. Nancy nodded, lips pressed into a thin line. That's their strategy. They figure if they can prove you're not in a stable environment, the court will overturn the emancipation. Can we use this recording? I asked Mr. Torres when we called him from the cafe. It depends on whether it was legally obtained, he said, voice tinny through the speaker. Washington is a two-party consent state for recordings. Nancy bit her lip. I didn't exactly ask permission. Then we can't use it in court, Mr. Torres said, but it gives us valuable insight into their strategy. We can prepare accordingly. As we left the cafe, Nancy pressed a piece of paper into my hand. My number. Call if you need anything. And Lila, you're incredibly brave. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Mr. Torres gathered character witnesses. Grandma had a full medical workup to prove she was perfectly capable, acing cognitive tests that made the doctor raise his eyebrows in admiration. I met with a court-appointed psychologist who would evaluate whether I was making informed decisions about my identity. Dr. Chen was nothing like the expert my parents had found. She asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully, and never once suggested my gender was a phase or confusion. "You're remarkably self-aware," she told me at the end of our session. "Many adults don't have the clarity you do about who they are." Meanwhile, the harassment continued. Someone created a fake social media account in my dead name, posting old photos and mocking comments about my mental illness. Grandma's car was keyed in the grocery store parking lot. The word "sinner" scratched into the driver's door, deep enough to catch my finger when I ran it across the letters. Each incident was reported, documented, added to our growing file, but none could be directly traced to my parents. 2 days before the hearing, I came home from school to find Grandma on the phone, her face ashen. "What is it?" I asked when she hung up, the receiver making a soft click. "That was Reverend Michaels from First Methodist," she said. "Apparently your parents have been contacting every church in town, telling them I'm an occultist who's using witchcraft to corrupt you." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "Witchcraft? Seriously? They found my old tarot cards in the attic," she said with a bitter laugh. "The ones my sister gave me in the 70s. I haven't touched them in decades." "This is insane," I whispered, sinking into a chair. "No," she corrected. "This is desperate. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks." The night before the hearing, I stood in front of my mirror, trying on the lavender dress for spring formal, the event I probably wouldn't be attending now. I smoothed the chiffon over my hips, watching how it caught the light like water. Grandma appeared in the doorway, her reflection joining mine. "Beautiful," she said softly. I turned to face her, fabric swishing around my legs. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. What if tomorrow goes wrong? What if they make me go back?" She crossed the room and took my hands, her skin soft with age. "Listen to me. No matter what happens in that courtroom, you are Lila. No judge, no parent, no one can take that from you. They can control where you live for now, but they can't control who you are." I hugged her fiercely, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and Earl Grey tea. "I love you. I love you too, my sweet girl." Morning came too quickly. I wore a simple blue dress with a cardigan, formal enough for court, but unmistakably feminine, a small act of defiance. The courthouse steps were crowded with people. Some held signs supporting me, "Let Lila live," and "Trans rights are human rights." Others held signs supporting my parents, "Save Mark," and "Stop child abuse." I kept my eyes forward, Grandma's hand steady on my back as we pushed through. Mr. Torres met us at the entrance, his face grim. "Your parents brought reinforcements," he warned. "Half their church is here, and that psychologist, Dr. Vaughn." Inside, the courtroom was packed. My parents sat at the front with their lawyer, a severe-looking woman named Ms. Blackwell. My mother wore a cross so large it looked like costume jewelry. My father's face was set in stone, jaw clenched tight. The hearing began with their side presenting first. Ms. Blackwell painted a picture of me as a confused, manipulated child and Grandma as an aging, unstable influence. Mrs. Ellsworth testified that I had been attention-seeking and disruptive at my old school. Dr. Vaughn spoke at length about social contagion and rapid-onset gender dysphoria, terms Mr. Torres later told me were not recognized by mainstream psychology. Then it was our turn. Mr. Torres presented evidence of my improved grades, statements from teachers at my new school, Dr. Chen's evaluation. Grandma's doctor testified about her excellent health, both physical and mental. When it was my turn to speak, I approached the stand with shaking legs. After being sworn in, I faced the judge directly. "Your Honor, I've been Lila my whole life. I just didn't have the words for it until recently. My parents didn't lose a son. They never had one. They had a daughter they refused to see." I described the years of isolation, the torn books, the conditional love. The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing at my parents. "Since living with my grandmother, I've thrived. My grades are better. I have friends. I'm not afraid all the time. Isn't that what parents should want for their child? For them to be happy and healthy?" When I finished, the courtroom was silent. My mother was crying silently, tears tracking through her makeup. My father wouldn't look at me, his gaze fixed on his hands. The judge called a recess to review all the evidence. As we waited in the hallway, I spotted Nancy sitting alone on a bench. She gave me a small, encouraging smile. When court resumed, the judge cleared his throat. "This is not a simple case. On one hand, we have parents who claim to be acting out of concern for their child's well-being. On the other, we have a minor who has been legally emancipated and appears to be thriving in her current environment." He shuffled some papers. "I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, including the troubling pattern of harassment that has coincided with these proceedings. While there is no direct proof linking the respondents to these incidents, the timing is suggestive." My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it, the blood rushing in my ears. The purpose of family law is not to enforce parental authority at all costs, but to ensure the well-being of the child. In this case, the evidence clearly shows that Lila is flourishing in her grandmother's care. Her academic performance has improved. Mental health professionals report she is well-adjusted. She has formed healthy peer relationships. He looked directly at my parents. By contrast, the evidence suggests that returning to her parents' home would be detrimental to her well-being. The court therefore denies the motion to overturn emancipation. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed, legs suddenly weak. Grandma squeezed my hand so hard it hurt, her rings pressing into my skin. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given the pattern of harassment, I am granting a temporary restraining order. The respondents must maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from both Lila and her grandmother, and refrain from any contact, direct or indirect, for a period of 90 days. My parents' lawyer immediately began whispering to them. My father's face had gone red with anger. My mother just looked hollow, emptied of everything but bitterness. As we left the courtroom, reporters called out questions. I kept my head down, overwhelmed by the noise and attention. But at the bottom of the courthouse steps, I paused and turned back. My parents stood at the top of the steps, surrounded by their church friends. For For a moment, our eyes met across the distance. I thought about the photo my mother had shown me at Pride, the one of me in the Batman cape and princess dress, the evidence that they had always known who I was, even if they couldn't accept it. I raised my hand in a small wave, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. They didn't wave back. In the car, Grandma turned to me. Spring formal is tomorrow. Do you still want to go? I thought about the lavender dress hanging in my closet, about how close I'd come to losing everything. Yes, I said. I want to go. That night, I reinstalled my social media apps, posted a simple update. We won. I'm staying home, my real home. Thank you to everyone who supported us. The comments flooded in immediately, but I didn't read them. Instead, I turned off my phone and went to help Grandma make dinner. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, but tonight, we were safe. Tonight, we were home. And tomorrow, I would wear my lavender dress and dance. The next morning, I woke up early, the memory of court still fresh in my mind. The lavender dress caught the sunlight streaming through my window, almost glowing against my closet door. Spring formal was tonight. After everything, it seemed surreal that I'd be doing something so normal. I padded downstairs to find Grandma already in the kitchen, humming as she flipped pancakes, the sizzle and sweet smell filling the air. Big day, she said, sliding a plate toward me. I nodded, drowning the pancakes in syrup. Do you think they'll leave us alone now? Grandma's hands paused mid-flip. I hope so, sweetheart, but people like your parents, they don't give up easily on their version of reality. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing breakfast. Grandma and I exchanged worried glances. We weren't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I spotted a delivery person holding a large white box. Grandma checked the security camera feed on her phone before cautiously opening the door. Delivery for Lila, the woman said cheerfully. I signed for the package and brought it to the kitchen table. No return address. Should I open it? I asked, suddenly wary of unexpected packages. Grandma nodded but stood back slightly, carefully. Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper, was a corsage of lavender roses and baby's breath, delicate and perfect. A small card read, "For the strongest girl I know. Wear this tonight and remember who you are. Love, Sarah." My childhood friend, the one who'd given me my first yellow sundress with blue flowers. We'd lost touch after my parents pulled me from school, but she must have seen my viral post. She remembered, I whispered, touching the delicate petals. Grandma smiled, crow's feet deepening around her eyes. True friends always do. I snapped a photo of the corsage and posted it with the caption, "From my first sundress to my first formal. Thank you, Sarah." Full circle moment. Within minutes, Sarah replied, "Couldn't let you go to your first dance without proper accessories. Call me sometime. Miss you." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Grandma helped me style my hair, pinning it up with small crystal clips she'd found at the vintage shop downtown. I did my makeup 3 times before getting it right. Subtle enough to look natural, but special enough for the occasion. "You don't have to be nervous," Grandma said, watching me fidget with my eyeliner. "I'm not nervous about the dance," I admitted, setting down the pencil. "I'm nervous about after. After everything settles down. After the court case and the viral posts and the drama. What if I'm just boring? What if being Lila isn't enough?" Grandma's reflection appeared behind mine in the mirror. "Oh, sweetheart, being yourself is always enough. The drama was never what made you special." At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Javier and 3 other friends from the LQBT club, Yasmin, Dominic, and Parker. They'd all coordinated to match my lavender theme, Javier in a purple bow tie, Yasmin with violet streaks in her hair, Dominic wearing a lilac boutonniere, and Parker in silver shoes with lavender laces. "The royal court has arrived to escort Her Majesty to the ball," Javier announced with a dramatic bow. I laughed, some of the tension finally leaving my shoulders. "You guys are ridiculous." "Correction, we're fabulous," Yasmin said, twirling to show off her midnight blue dress. Grandma insisted on taking photos, dozens of them, me alone in my lavender dress, me with each friend, all of us together on the porch. By the time she finished, my cheeks hurt from smiling. "One more," she said, handing her phone to Parker. "I need one with my girl." The photo of Grandma and me, arms around each other on the porch swing, would later become my phone background for months. As we were leaving, Grandma pressed something into my hand, a small silver locket. "It was my sister's," she said quietly. I thanked her, clasping it around my neck. Inside was a tiny black and white photo of 2 young women, arms linked, laughing at the camera. Grandma and her sister, before the family tore them apart. The dance was being held in the school gymnasium, transformed with twinkling lights and silver streamers that caught and reflected the colored spotlights. As we walked in, I braced myself for stares or whispers. There were some. I wasn't naive enough to think everyone would be accepting, but mostly, people were just dancing, living their lives, too caught up in their own dramas to focus on mine. "See?" Javier said, nudging me. "You're old news already." We claimed a table near the dance floor and took turns getting punch. Dominic pulled Yasmin onto the dance floor during a fast song. Parker disappeared to chat with their debate team friends. Javier stayed with me, people watching and making up stories about the other students. "That's definitely a vampire," he said, pointing to Mr. Kowalski, the chemistry teacher chaperoning by the door. "Look how pale he is. Probably hasn't fed in weeks." I snorted punch through my nose, earning a triumphant grin from Javier. Halfway through the night, during a slow song, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find a girl I recognized from my English class. Olivia, I thought her name was. "I just wanted to say," she began, twisting her corsage nervously. "Your speech at Pride was really amazing. My cousin is trans, and hearing you speak like that, it helped me understand him better." Before I could respond, she hurried back to her friends, leaving me blinking in surprise. "Told you," Javier said. "You're making a difference just by existing." The night continued, dancing, laughing, taking silly photos in the booth set up in the corner. For a few hours, I wasn't that trans girl who went viral, or the kid with the court case. I was just Lila, a teenager at a school dance with her friends, until my phone buzzed with a notification, an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line made my blood freeze. "We're not done with you." I excused myself to the bathroom, hands shaking as I opened it. Enjoy your dance, abomination. We're watching. This isn't over. Attached was a photo taken through a window. Me, getting ready in my bedroom earlier that day. I dropped my phone, suddenly struggling to breathe, the air thick as syrup. They'd been watching our house, taking pictures through my window. The restraining order meant nothing to them. The bathroom door swung open, and Yasmin walked in. One look at my face, and she was by my side. What happened? I showed her the email. Her eyes widened. We need to call the police, she said firmly. Right now. 20 minutes later, Officer Ramirez was taking my statement in the principal's office while Grandma drove over. The dance continued in the gym, but word had spread quickly. My friends formed a protective circle, refusing to leave me alone even for a minute. The photo was taken from your neighbor's yard, Officer Ramirez explained after making some calls. We're sending a patrol car to your house now to check the property. It's them, I said, certain. My parents. We'll investigate, she promised, but without proof. I knew the rest. Without proof, there was little they could do. Grandma arrived, her face tight with worry. We're getting better security, she declared. Motion sensors, floodlights, the works. I'm sorry, I whispered as we drove home. My lavender dress crumpled from sitting in the principal's office. I ruined the dance. You didn't ruin anything, Grandma said firmly. They did, and they don't get to win. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every shadow had me sitting bolt upright. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went downstairs to find Grandma already in the kitchen, making tea. Couldn't sleep either? I asked. She shook her head. I keep thinking about what they might do next. We sat in silence, sipping our tea, until Grandma suddenly set down her mug with a decisive clink. I've been thinking, she said. What if we moved? I blinked at her. Moved? Where? Anywhere. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, somewhere with a bigger community, somewhere they couldn't find us so easily. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. But your house, your friends, your whole life is here. Grandma reached across the table to take my hand. My whole life is wherever you are, sweet girl. This house is just walls and a roof. We can make a home anywhere. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hammering. I found Grandma on the front porch with a woman in overalls installing a security camera. Morning, sleepyhead, Grandma called. This is Dana from Secure Home Systems. She's setting us up with the full package. Dana waved a drill at me. Your grandma doesn't mess around. This place is going to be Fort Knox by the time I'm done. By afternoon, our house bristled with cameras, motion sensors, and floodlights. Dana walked us through the new security app on our phones. Any movement outside, you'll know about it, she assured us. And it all records to the cloud, so even if someone damages the cameras, you'll have the footage. That night, my support group held an emergency meeting. Tony had called everyone together after hearing about the email at the dance. This is serious escalation, they said, their purple hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. You all need to be extra vigilant. Travel in groups. Keep your location services turned off on social media. The others nodded solemnly. We'd all faced harassment, but this felt different. More targeted, more dangerous. I've been thinking about moving, I admitted. Grandma suggested it last night. That might not be a bad idea, Tony said thoughtfully. A fresh start somewhere with more resources for trans youth. Yasmin squeezed my hand. We'd miss you like crazy, but we'd understand. On the drive home, Grandma and I talked more seriously about the possibility. I could sell the house, she mused. Property values are up. We could find a nice condo in Seattle near the University District. You could finish high school there. What about your garden? I asked. Grandma's roses were her pride and joy. She smiled. Plants can be replanted, Lila. People need to go where they can grow. The next day, Mr. Torres called with news. The police had identified the sender of the threatening email. Not my parents, but a member of their church. A man named Vincent Miller, who'd been at the courthouse during our hearing. They're arresting him now, Mr. Torres said, and they're investigating whether he was also responsible for the rock through your window. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by confusion. But not my parents? No evidence linking them directly, he said, though they're investigating whether your father knew about it. Phone records show multiple calls between him and Miller the day of the dance. It was something at least. A small measure of justice. But it didn't answer the bigger question. Would we ever be truly safe here? That evening, as Grandma and I sat on the porch swing, now under the watchful eye of 2 security cameras, I made my decision. I want to stay, I said. Grandma looked surprised. Are you sure? After everything? I nodded, running my fingers over the silver locket around my neck. If we leave, they win. This is our home. I don't want to be chased away from it. She studied my face for a long moment. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, I replied, echoing one of her favorite sayings. The next week brought changes. Vincent Miller was charged with stalking and harassment. The restraining order against my parents was extended to include electronic contact after evidence emerged that my father had known about the photos, text messages between him and Miller revealing his awareness of the surveillance. At school, I rejoined the LQB Plus club meetings, worked on my English essay about identity and belonging, helped Yasmin campaign for student council, normal teenage things that felt extraordinary after everything that had happened. One afternoon, I came home to find Grandma in the garden, digging up one of her rose bushes. What are you doing? I asked, dropping my backpack on the porch. Transplanting, she said, wiping soil from her forehead with the back of her gardening glove. This yellow rose needs more sun. It's been struggling in the shade. I watched as she carefully moved the plant to a sunnier spot, patting the soil around its roots with gentle hands. There, she said, sitting back on her heels. Now it can truly thrive. That night, I reinstalled my social media apps, posted a new photo, me in the garden, next to Grandma's newly transplanted yellow rose. The caption read, "Some of us need to be replanted to bloom. Some of us need to stand our ground. Either way, we grow." Still here. I didn't block comments this time. Let them come. The good, the bad, the confused. I wasn't hiding anymore. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Grandma watched as I turned it over in my hands. "You don't have to open it," she said. "I know." I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. No apology. No declaration of acceptance. Just 3 lines. We're moving to Arizona. Your father's company is transferring him. I've enclosed something that belongs to you. Inside the envelope was a small, faded photograph. Me at 8 years old, in that first yellow sundress with blue flowers. The one Sarah had given me. The one that started everything. I stared at it for a long time. The joy on my face. The freedom in my posture. The authenticity that had terrified them so much they'd spent years trying to crush it. They're leaving, I told Grandma, passing her the note. She read it quickly. How do you feel about that? I considered the question carefully. Relieved, sad, free. I looked down at the photo again. Mostly free. That evening, I added the childhood photo to my Instagram. No caption this time. Just the image of a child being exactly who she was meant to be. The comments poured in immediately, but one stood out. From my father's account, the first and only time he'd ever acknowledged my online presence. Be well, Lila. 2 words. Not an apology, not acceptance, but something like release. I didn't respond. Some conversations are better left unfinished. Summer arrived. Grandma's roses bloomed in spectacular fashion, especially the transplanted yellow one. I got a part-time job at the local bookstore, applied for a summer writing program at the community college, started researching universities with strong LGBTQ+ support systems. Life settled into a new normal. Not perfect, not without challenges, but mine. On the anniversary of the day I ran away, the day I came home to Grandma's, we celebrated with chicken pot pie, just like that first night. As we ate, Grandma raised her water glass in a toast to seeds that grow, no matter where they're planted. I touched my glass to hers, to finding where you belong. Later, I stood in front of my mirror, the lavender dress from spring formal now hanging as a memento on my wall. Beside it, a calendar marked with college application deadlines, support group meetings, and normal teenage plans. I touched the silver locket around my neck, thinking of Grandma's sister who never got to live openly, of all the people before me who made my life possible, of all the people who would come after. They tried to bury me, but here I was, growing,